Okay. All right.
Hello and namaste. Today's live is very special,
Namaste. Namaste.
and we have John Romaine, our very special guest for today's live. And then that's the reason we have John. That's the reason our live is 2 hours earlier for tonight. So this is a very special live, and then I want you to watch from the very beginning to the very end. And then please tag if you have any friends who want to learn SEO. If your friends have any questions related to SEO, please tag them in the comments, and then feel free to ask your questions. So John has been in SEO business for more than 20 years, and then he has been successfully running SEO agency. I'm personally learning a lot from John, and then he's very generous person, and then he never holds back anything, then gives all away. So it's your time to get more and pick more of his brain in this live. The live goes for 1 hour, and then not unlike our regular live, this will be in English. So if I misspell anything or something like that, just please forgive me about that. So
Just let everyone know, Rambo, that if there's any questions that we don't cover on the call, I'm happy to answer them afterwards. So if you get a list of questions, as we said before the call, just gather those questions up. So guys, if you don't get a chance to ask your question, pass those questions over to Rambo, and he'll forward them over to me, and I'll come back in the next day or so and answer them for everyone.
Yeah, so the goal is to help you guys as much as possible. So if you have any questions related to SEO, please keep it specific to SEO only. So put that in the comment, and then we'll try to answer as much questions as possible, but we have a time limit, and then it's already past midnight for John. So if we are not able to answer any questions, John will definitely come back and then record a video, and then we'll respond to you afterwards. Okay. So John, let's get started.
Yeah.
And okay, so all the people who are in the audience who are watching us live right now, please comment live if you are watching it live, and then if you watch it recorded, please you can comment recorded when you watch this. So John, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rambo. I appreciate it, man.
Okay, so here, how did you? I want to go now officially. How did you start your career? Like, was it always sales and marketing from the very beginning, or you switched to SEO and sales and marketing after seeing any opportunities, or something happened, some incident in your life?
I need to go way back here, so I've got to think for a moment, because we're going back to the late 90s, and I'm going to give you the short version. Going back to the late 90s, at the time I was working a labouring job, and I was earning very little money, and I thought, okay, I've had enough of this. I want to do something. And I'd always been good with computers, and I called a good friend of mine, and I asked him, I said, listen, I'm thinking about buying a computer, going to TAFE, which is kind of similar to college overseas. He asked me what I was doing at the time, and just by chance and a little bit of luck, there was a job going where he was working, and he offered me a casual position there. And I went from literally working as a labourer to suddenly working in an office environment. Again, this is the short version. And I was thrust, and I'd always done computing at school. And I went from literally pushing a broom to sitting in an office back in front of a computer. And that was the first time. That was November 1998. And that was the first time I'd been exposed to the internet. I had never seen the internet before. And I thought, wow, what is this? I was absolutely fascinated with it. And I just knew, given my background in art, because I was actually looking at getting into graphic design. I was going to go to TAFE and learn, or college if you prefer, and learn graphic design. And that's why I was asking my friend, I'm going to buy a computer, what should I buy? And he said, what are you doing? Anyway, so one thing led to another. I ended up in this job in local government, and that was the first time I'd seen the internet. And I remember it took me about half an hour to figure out how to sign up for an email account because I'd never seen the internet before. So that was from November 1998, and then tying in my graphic design skills with the internet, I naturally transitioned into web design because I thought I can take my artistic skills and build websites. And I was fascinated with the idea of creating something that other people could view on the other side of the world. Like, it was such a new thing for me. So I invested a lot of time, my own time outside of my full-time job, learning how to build websites. And in the early 2000s, around 2001, 2002, I started my own online business. So I was teaching myself how to do web design, and then started an online business. So I was kind of teaching myself how to do web design and SEO for myself in my own time. So after work, I'd get home from work and I would sit on the computer till 2 o'clock in the morning, go to bed, get up, go to work, come home. And I did that for years on end. And then somehow I got asked to build someone a website, because I guess just through friends, someone said, "Hey, John builds websites." And so I started building websites for people. And then the natural transition from doing web design to SEO was actually quite easy, because the first thing people say when you build, well, back then, this is about 2004, back then I would build someone a website and they'd say, "Oh, can you help us get found in Google? Can you help us get found in Google?" So because I'd already had those skill sets in learning how to do web design and SEO for myself at home in my own time, when I started building websites for people, they would then ask me, "Can you help us do SEO?" So it was almost an accident that I got into SEO, although I was learning how to do SEO for my own online businesses. That's a very, very short and probably messy version of my story. But that I got into SEO probably full time around 2002. So it'll be 20 years next year, I think. Yeah, and a lot's changed in that time. But that's the very short version of my story.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, okay, I have seen like most of the SEO professional, like they started somewhere else and then they transitioned into SEO. It's the same with me as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, to summarize, I was doing web design first, and I think a lot of people make that transition. They're building websites and then they transition into SEO. That's not always true, but I think for a lot of freelancers in particular, they might start doing web design and then move into SEO.
Okay. And then, okay, what changed in SEO space from the point you have started in like as full time in 2002 till now in 2021? What you have seen?
That's a big question. I think I was actually thinking about this question before we got on the call. I kind of expected it. To be honest, the basic fundamentals of SEO have not really changed. It's all about building sites that provide value, that they're informative and provide value, and they also provide a very a positive and enjoyable user experience. That is really the basic fundamentals of what SEO is. I mean, that might sound very simplistic, but it's true. That has never changed. What has changed in that time is the technology and the way we now interact with the web. Going back to the late 90s, I mean, all you had to think about was a 15-inch CRT monitor. So long as your web page displayed correctly on that screen, that's all you had to think about. But now everyone's, they're using the web on the TV, on their mobiles, on tablets, on laptops. the technology has changed, but the basic fundamentals of SEO have not changed. Sure, there have been a lot of changes along the way in terms of responsiveness and site speed and HTTPS and a lot of these other things. One thing that definitely has changed, and this will probably continue on for the foreseeable future, is the loopholes. The loopholes, right? People that are chasing shortcuts, trying to game the system, those loopholes are always getting shut down. And this is why you'll often see people that are running from one bright, shiny object to the next. Okay, guys, do this. This now works. I mean, that's been true for the last probably 15 years. Link Varna or Market Samurai and the Hoth and all of these other services. And if you do this, this will work. Oh, wait a minute. There's been an update. Don't do that anymore. Now do this. And you'll see people shift in large groups between trends. So I think that's probably, aside from technology, I think changes in the algorithm that are shutting down those loopholes are probably some of the biggest changes that I've seen. And, as I said, those changes, those changes with the algorithm, they will continue. And this is why I say, and it's very important for your listeners to take this on board. In the almost 20 years that I've been doing SEO, I've only been hit once with a penalty, and that was Penguin back in April 2012. And I got hit with a penalty because I deserved it. I was mucking around using link building services. And I will never make that mistake again. I very, very rarely, if ever, look at what's happening in terms of updates, because my philosophy is if you just focus on providing value and you're thinking about the end user, then you won't need to worry about getting called out or the next Google update or copying a penalty. So that's kind of the way I operate. That's how I run my business, and that's what I teach within my group, as you know.
Yeah. Okay. I'm learning a lot from you, and then your process is very simple and straightforward. Like there is no shortcut or any loophole. You never talk about these things. And then there are lots of shiny objects that we see whenever we scroll through internet, about SEO, this works and that works. So one question here is, what was the number one thing that you thought was really important in SEO, but later found out that was wrong?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I saw this one in the notes before we jumped on. I had probably many false beliefs. I talk a lot in the group about having false belief systems. I've got to do this to have this sort of outcome. I believed that in order to make a lot of money in SEO, that I needed to have this big, fancy agency with 50 staff and 1,000 clients, and I needed to have a briefcase and a suit. That is really not true. I don't want to get into the figures of what I was actually earning, but it was a lot. And let's say it was more than $500,000, right? And I was making that money working from home, sitting here working in my underpants, right? I think at the time I had about 25 clients. So I think for anyone that's getting into SEO, and let's face it, the majority of people get into SEO because of the earning potential. It can be very lucrative. I think many of them might share that same belief in that they think they need to scale and have this huge agency in order to make a lot of money. I found that out to be not true. Again, I had a very small client base. I think at the time I had 4 staff members, all virtual assistants, and I was able to make very good money.
Okay, and then now you are working from home, and then all your staffs are virtuals, right?
All my staff are virtual. Yes.
Okay. So I just want to turn into the audience. Okay, we have 26 people watching live. right now. So if you have any questions for John, please feel free to put them in the comments, and then we'll get back to your questions. I have few questions for John, but again, we'll definitely come back to your questions because this live is for you, you guys. So I invited John so that like he can answer your questions in real time. You don't get this chance. These are the rare chance, and then John is a very busy person as well. Okay, John. Uh, Now I want to talk about niching down. Okay, so you give that you talk about this on like almost all of your videos, all of your posts everywhere.
Yeah.
So, well, like tell us about a little bit about niching down and where one can start. Okay.
All right. So I've actually got some notes here on screen, and I want to cheat a little bit here and read my notes because I want to get my wording right on this. I think if anyone in your group is interested in the benefit in niching down and also understanding the benefits of why niching down is advantageous in terms of being able to productize your service offering and work towards scale and automation, I think niching down is very important. So I'm just going to read from my notes here so that I get my wording right on this. So niching down means being particular about your target audience, the industry you work in, the services you provide, and the types of clients you serve. Okay, so I guess you could break it down into for most SEO consultants, you'll have specialists who niche down and they specialize in a particular service offering or within a particular industry, or you'll have generalists, right? Now, typically generalists provide a range of services within any industry for any type of client with no preference towards any particular target market or audience, right? Now, specialists are usually much more rigid with their processes and less likely to deviate away from them. Specialists have a deep understanding of the industry they operate in, their clients, and are viewed as experts in their chosen field. Now, I was thinking about how best to explain this in layman's terms before I got on the call. When you specialize, you're investing yourself into a repeatable process, right? It's all part of the feedback loop that I talk about because you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. For example, let's say you niche down and you just do SEO for plumbers, or you just do SEO for electricians, or you just do SEO for lawyers. I mean, they're just some examples. Because you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, you embed yourself into a feedback loop. And it's very much the same because you're doing the same thing over and over again. It's very much the same as anything in life. When you do the same thing over and over and over again, you become an expert at it and you know how to do it very, very well. If you think about it, learning, if you decided, okay, I want to learn how to play the violin, and you just practice the violin over and over and over again, or playing a video game, you play the same video game over and over, you eventually become an expert. And same maybe with sport. I want to learn how to play cricket, and you just play cricket. So it's very much the same sort of approach as very much anything in life. I'm a big fan of niching down because, as opposed to working as a generalist, I mean, and I've said this a lot in the group, Rambo, when you work as a generalist, each time you pick up a new campaign, you're starting from zero because you might be working in a space where you don't have any experience. Like if I just got started in SEO and my first client was a plumber, and that's all great and fantastic, and then I get another client and they do, this person is a cosmetic surgeon. I have to learn that whole industry. I have to learn the different keywords. I have to learn the competition. I have to learn the terminology. You have this really steep learning curve, right? And this is what happens. You end up in this cycle. Each time you pick up a new client, because you're generalizing, you got this really steep learning curve. So you're doing this essentially over and over and over again. And I heard a great saying about 12 months ago: learning curves cost time and money. Okay, because each time you pick up a new client, oh man, we got to learn how to, everything that I just touched on. We got to learn the terminology. We have to learn the keywords. We have to reverse engineer the site structure of competitors. I mean, there's so much. We have to learn what sort of content to create. You have this really steep learning curve. So when you niche down, again, you're doing the same thing over and over again. So you eliminate this up and down learning curve, and slowly it moves it moves in an upward trend to the point where you become so efficient at working in that space that you can systemize it, right? And I talk a lot about this in the group, working toward productizing your service offering and working towards automation and scale. When you're doing the same thing over and over again, right, it becomes like baking a cake. You can just have a list of steps and ingredients. This is what we need to do for every single client. And when you get to that place, I mean, everything is much, much easier. You're not going around and around and around in circles with new clients and new industries all the time, because that is an absolute nightmare.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to take a few questions from the audience. So I want to pick the relevant one first. So here is one from Amar. SEO agency do have to work for different niches, isn't it? Like we may not have enough clients in same niche and businesses may not go long term. Am I correct? So that's the question from Amar.
Sorry, what was the question?
SEO agency do have to work for different niches, isn't it? Like we may not have enough clients. So he says, like, okay, if we niche down, we might not get enough clients in the same niche. So
yeah,
it means
that's a common concern for anyone when they're first presented with this idea of niching down. There's not enough to go around. That is a false belief system, and it's really it revisits something that I talk a lot about. The scarcity mindset. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how large this person wants to grow their agency, if they want to have 500 clients or they want to have 1,000 clients, or if they just want to have 10 clients. I've already proven that you can make good money just with 15, 20 clients. I don't believe that there's scarcity in terms of being able to provide SEO services within any particular industry. Don't forget, niching down doesn't just mean niching down into an industry. And we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, Rambo, where I said niching down doesn't mean you just have to go and do SEO for plumbers. You can niche down into different services as well. So migrating sites from, say, Wix to WordPress, right? And making sure that you bring the site across and preserve all of their rankings. I mean, that could be tied in as part of an SEO service. Or you might just specialize in SEO for Shopify, right? So you're not limiting yourself within a particular niche. You still have some range there, because let's face it, there's a lot of Shopify sites around. So there's some room to move. And the other thing that I will say is niching down may become problematic if you're targeting hyper-local businesses, right? If you're targeting local businesses like a local florist or a hardware or something like that, then niching down may not be the best approach. For me, I want to niche down into a particular industry, but I'm going to go global, right? And as you know, I only want probably 10 or 15 clients, right? I can make 50 grand a month with that, and I'm fine with that. So look, there's both pros and cons around niching down, and we probably don't have enough time to go through all of those on this call. But I don't believe that there's scarcity around when it comes to niching down. I think there's plenty of work for everyone.
Yeah. there's plenty of fish in the sea.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
like, okay, for Amar, the suggestion is like, okay, don't limit yourself in the local. This is the internet. That's the beauty of internet. Like, okay, you can work for any business across the globe. That's the beauty of internet. Okay. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. And John, okay, so I want to ask my questions, and then and then I will add one of the audience questions after that.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you always talk about finding the right client. So where to find a high-paying client? So like, okay, if you work with like a $500 clients, like, okay, you will be stressed out. So like,
Yeah.
a post on LinkedIn and then on some Facebook post like, okay, how $500 clients response, and then how easy it to work with a $5,000 client. So where one can find a high paying clients.
All right. I'm just taking some notes here because I want to make sure that I get. I want to get these points out. So. The first thing that I will say is that this question really revisits the importance of niching down and specializing, right? I think for a lot of SEO freelancers and consultants, and I certainly made this mistake when I first started, I was just saying yes to everyone, right? When you do that, you're working as a generalist. When you do that, you don't really know who your customers are. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of SEO consultants are making. When you don't know who you're targeting, that makes finding clients very difficult. And I think this is why you see so many people running around all over the internet, blasting emails and messaging people on LinkedIn and Facebook saying, "Hey, we do SEO." And when you're doing that, your message is pretty vague and meaningless. No one's going to care. So I think there are 3 points that I've written down here that I think that matter most. And knowing these 3 things will help you identify where those high-paying clients are and where you need to spend your time, okay? Because if you don't know who you're targeting, you don't know who your customers are, how do you intend on finding them, okay? That's the bottom line. So the first thing is knowing your niche, okay? If you know where you're going to specialize and where you're going to niche down, then that takes this big fuzzy black mess of confusion and uncertainty, and it narrows it down, so it gives you a target to start with. Let's say legal. Okay, so we're going to go to say legal, and I just plucked that off the top of my head. So we know that we want to specialize and niche down in legal. The next thing we need to think about in order to get those high-paying clients is knowing who our ideal clients are. So if we're going to niche down into legal, I mean, legal is there's a lot of money in the legal space. If we're going to niche down into legal, then we want to think about the industries or the sub-niches in that niche, because you can have immigration law, you can have personal injury law, you can have family law. There's a whole bunch of different sectors in that industry. So if you firstly know your niche, and then secondly know who your ideal client is, right? And the tricky part is, and I'm getting ahead of myself here, the tricky part is not knowing initially. And this is where I think working as a generalist has some value, because you can try different spaces and figure out over time, you'll be able to figure out where to invest your efforts. But firstly, knowing your niche. Secondly, knowing your ideal client. And thirdly, knowing what your offer is. And again, I see people running around the internet blasting vague messages all over the place, offering SEO or first page rankings. It doesn't really mean anything. One thing that I will say, in addition to that, when it comes to finding high-paying clients, and this might sound a bit obvious, you've got to go where the money is. Okay, you have to go where the money is. And again, this revisits my point of niching down, knowing who your ideal clients are, and knowing exactly what your offer is. You can't sell $5,000 a month SEO to a local florist where they're selling, $20 bunches of flowers for $20 a pop. But you can sell SEO at $5,000 a month to a lawyer who specializes in family law. Does that make sense? So, and again, I think a lot of people are making the mistake, and I hear this a lot, right? I hear this a lot from SEO consultants that say, I tried pitching 5,000, or let's be conservative here, right? I tried pitching $2,000 a month SEO, and everyone told me that I was too expensive. Well, my question to that is, who's everyone? Okay, because you can't walk into a Mercedes-Benz dealership with $100 in your pocket, right? So it needs to be a good fit, right? It needs to be a good fit. So if you're thinking, right, I want to charge $2,000 a month for SEO, then you need to be very, very clear and selective about who you're trying to sell those services to. Okay, I talk about this a lot. You can't sell $5,000 a month SEO to a business that sells $2 widgets and they're making $3,000 a month revenue. It will just be too stressful.
Yeah. Okay. That covers a lot of queries, or like how to get a high paying clients, because you have to go to where the money is. Like, okay, if you go to someone who doesn't have the money, like they can't pay.
Yeah, I see there's a question that someone asked here about how do you filter your clients? Yeah. I have a questionnaire that I use. I don't have one on my desk at the moment, but I have a what I call my telephone run sheet. I keep them printed out on my desk. Remember, I know exactly who my ideal clients are, and if I get inquiries from people that aren't in that industry or don't fit my ideal client, then I refer them on. I don't take them on because it's going to take me outside of my processes, right? And when you do that, that's when you get into that mess that we spoke about earlier. But in terms of filtering my clients, I have a run sheet that I use so that when the phone rings and I pick it up and I answer it, I can structure the call and I ask a number of questions in order to pre-qualify my clients. I mean, firstly, I need to know that they're in the industry that I serve. There's probably two questions here that are most important at all that I'll touch on for your audience, Rambo. And this is how you can determine as to whether or not they're going to be a good fit, because the numbers need to make sense. Economically, it needs to make sense. Otherwise, again, you're going to be trying to sell SEO to someone that's only got $300 a month, and it's just not going to be worth it. So those two things are, you should already know this, Rambo. What's an average lead or sale worth? We're asking the client or the prospect, what's an average lead? What's the lead value or sale value on the low end? What's that worth? And what's the business's monthly net revenue? We're asking about lead value because, again, you can't sell $3,000 a month or $5,000 a month SEO to a company that's selling $5 widgets.
Yeah.
Because, as you know, I talk a lot about focusing on revenue, not rankings, as a key performance indicator. And if you've got a client that is selling $5 widgets, it's going to be really hard to get them return on investment if you're charging, say, $3,000 a month if they're selling $5 widgets, because they've got to sell a lot of widgets in order to get, positive return on investment. So the first question is, what's the average lead? What's the lead value or sale value worth? If they say, we're a large physiotherapy company and each customer is $2,000, then that is a no-brainer. They qualify and they would move on to the next step, because you've only got to get them maybe one or two customers, and then they'll be making a positive return on investment. The next question is monthly revenue. You need to ask the business what their monthly revenue is, because you can't be trying to save someone's business if it's broken. If they're making $3,000 a month and they've got $1,500 left after tax and expenses, then you can't be charging $2,000 or $3,000 a month for SEO, because it'll be too stressful. I like to think about it like this, Rambo. I like to help businesses that are doing well do even better. It's much, much easier to work with businesses, clients that are running healthy businesses that want to move from $100,000 a month to $500,000 a month, as opposed to having some desperate plumber on the phone saying, my business is going under and we're desperate for leads, and if this doesn't work, I'm going to ask for it's too stressful. So that's really, really important.
Okay. And there are a few more questions. Like, we are already halfway through our live, and then okay, time flies.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. So, what's the difference between working as an SEO lead or working under a leader? So,
as the business owner or as an employee?
Yeah, so it means like, okay, SEO lead, it means if referring to a SEO agency owner or something, and then working under another is like working as an employee. What's the difference?
Working as an employee sucks. Yeah, I'm a terrible employee. That's why I run my own business. That's why I quit my job. I'm not sure I can be of much help on that question, but I knew when I quit my government job, I was making $100,000 a year, and I wanted out because I wanted to run my own business. I have seen a lot of people that are interested in starting their own SEO business that don't have experience, and rather than putting themselves in a very stressful situation, they get a job working for an SEO agency, so they can get some experience and they can learn some of the internal processes and everything else. As to whether or not that is beneficial, I don't know, because some agencies are quite questionable in the tactics that they employ. So I don't know, but I couldn't really say for that one, Rambo.
Okay, that's it. But like, everyone has to go through that transition. They sometimes have to work for someone and then learn, and then they can start their own business. Like, that's the route. That's how you started, John, and that's what I did for myself. And then, okay, so that's the part of the journey, I believe.
Yeah, well, I never learned from anyone. I'm completely self-taught. But if I had my time over again, and I've said this a lot, if I had my time over again, I would have gotten myself a mentor. Okay, I can't stress the value of that enough. I mean, if you think about perhaps what you've learned from me already, Rambo, and I mean, once I finish updating the training, I mean, your mind's going to probably explode. But the value of investing in yourself, investing in your education, and getting yourself a mentor. I mean, you think about, what's the value in getting my knowledge? Because I'm 20 years down the road. I'm 20 years further down the road, and I've already made all of those mistakes. When I first started, I did it the hard way. Didn't waste, because I can now sell the knowledge that I've acquired, but I spent an enormous amount of time. I'm talking years and years and years of sitting up late on the computer, on weekends, at night. I broke up with plenty of girlfriends and didn't go away on holiday because I was just so focused on learning this trade. But it was a tremendous mistake, and it wasn't until probably about 11 years ago now when I started investing more in my education and getting myself mentors, because you can save an enormous amount of time, right, by learning from someone that has all of that experience. You'll accelerate and fast track your progress rather than sitting there mucking around in Facebook groups and forums and watching YouTube videos and guessing and hoping that things will work. Find someone that you can learn from directly. It's something that I really can't stress enough. And there are a few people in the group, in my group, that reached out to me, and they've made tremendous progress by doing that.
Okay. Yeah, even I'm learning from John, and then I'm proud of that. Like, okay, I'm following like exact process that you do for your clients, and then like that saves tons of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I share a saying quite often in the group, and this is something that a mentor said to me years ago. He said to me, if I ran through a live minefield and I made it safely to the other side, wouldn't you want to know exactly where I stepped? And I thought, of course. I mean, I've run through that minefield so many times. I think we've had this discussion, right? And I've been blown up and lost limbs, and I've already made all of the mistakes. And this is why, I enjoy teaching other people, because I've already made the mistakes, and those mistakes, they're valuable because I can help other people. I can prevent them from making those same mistakes and help them fast track their progress.
Okay. I want to ask one questions, and then I will take a few questions from the audience. So the beauty of SEO is that recurring revenue, month by month. Okay. So
Yes.
but here in this community, like people are struggling to get their recurring clients for their agency, or like they get SEO clients for a fixed price. So how to convert a one-time client? So they come to you with a specific problem and convert them into a recurring clients for 12 to 18 months. What do you suggest?
I'm curious to know, when you say one-time projects, you're referring to SEO, yes?
Yes, SEO.
Right.
So
Okay. So is that a common thing in Nepal? Is it just a one-time
yeah,
fee for SEO and it gets done once and that's it?
yeah, it's like most of the time is the case.
Right. Maybe that's something that is the norm within Nepal. Is that true?
It's not a norm. We're educating the prospects now, but like most of the clients come and they believe that, okay, doing SEO for one time and it works for forever. So how to change that?
Yeah. Again, this comes down to specializing, niching down, knowing exactly who you're targeting, being selective about who you work with. You want to work with clients that get it, where you don't. I mean, there'll always be a level of education when you pick up new prospects, but you should never have to try and convince someone that in order for them to get results, you need to do this for a number of months. This is kind of a bit unusual to hear this question, because here in Australia and most places overseas, it's just common knowledge that SEO is a monthly thing. I don't know. I'm not quite sure how it would be pitched as a one-time project, unless, of course, someone came to me and said, "I'm going to pay you 60 grand to do SEO for the next 12 months," which I've done that. But I think the simple answer is you've got to specialize, niche down, and know exactly who you're targeting, and be very selective about who you work with. And look, we could talk about this for hours. It's very difficult for me to articulate exactly everything that's involved in order to onboard clients and pre-qualify, set expectation levels, and help educate them about the processes. But I think that's probably the quickest and easiest answer I can give. You've got to be selective about who you work with. Look, if you're picking up leads and they're constantly saying, "No, I don't want to pay every month," then you've got to stop and ask yourself, well, maybe I'm talking to the wrong people. are these people that I'm talking to in Nepal, these people are no good. Maybe I need to specialize and start targeting people in the United Kingdom or Australia or Canada or the United States or New Zealand or somewhere else where it's just common knowledge that clients pay $1,500 a month or $2,000 a month and they sign up for a 6 or 12-month contract.
Okay, yeah. So now I want to take questions from the audience. Okay, please keep asking the questions. Even if we can't cover, even if we run out of time, we will definitely get back to you later. So don't hesitate and ask your questions, and then feel free to tag your friends as well. So here's the thing, John. What do you have to say about PBNs from your experience?
I have nothing to do with PBNs. Absolutely nothing. And I would strongly advise everyone on this call, if they're involved with PBNs in any way, to give it up, because I see so many people investing so much time, effort, and money in trying to build out PBNs, or I find it almost ironic that people spend so much time, money, and effort building out fake sites that they're trying to make look real. I mean, why not just use real sites? I don't use PBNs for my business. I never have, and I never will, because I don't need to. I've got someone that I've hired to do off-page optimization. So he does all of the outreach and prospecting and having articles published and everything else. I have absolutely no interest or desire or need to get involved in PBNs. Now, I can only speak for myself. I know if you're running a very large-scale agency and you had thousands of clients, I could understand perhaps then how building out a PBN might be beneficial, but it would have to be very, very sophisticated. The problem I see with the majority of people that are investing their efforts towards PBNs is that I can usually reverse engineer a PBN and find the whole network within 5 minutes. And if I can do that, that means anyone can. And that's when, that's when you can put yourself at risk of getting penalized. For me, and the way that I run my business, I take what I do very seriously, and I don't like to muck around with my clients' businesses, because for many of my clients, well, all of my clients, that's their livelihoods. I've got clients that have 20, 30, 50 staff. Some have more. And the majority of their sales and earnings come through the website. Now, if I'm mucking around using PBNs and the whole lot gets penalized, that could have a really horrible flow-on effect for a lot of people. People could lose their jobs. So I'm not willing to take those risks. Again, I keep what I do white hat. I'm not interested in chasing shortcuts and trying to game the system. For what I do, at least, I have nothing to do with PBNs, and I would strongly recommend that anyone that's involved with PBNs stop wasting your time with it, because I get great results from all my clients. I've never used PBNs, and I don't intend on ever using PBNs.
Okay. Okay, here's another question. Where do you think SEO is going
PBN,
to
someone just asked, what is a PBN? A private blog network.
Okay, it's private. Okay. So where do you think SEO is going towards? Is it more videos? Videos SEO, more towards Google dominating the SEO industry by building everything in-house like GMB, Google Shopping, so website becomes irrelevant?
Yeah, this is a big question, and it's a topic that I often think about. I think I can't. One thing that we know so far about SEO is that it's been pretty consistent over the last 20 years, right? A lot of people will run around the internet saying, oh, SEO is dead, right? Everyone's been saying that for the last 20 years. Every year, like, yeah. Does SEO still work in 2021? I've been hearing that since the late 90s. So SEO has been very consistent, and I think so long as people are searching and trying to find things on the web, then SEO is going to exist. As to whether or not that can change, well, then, I mean, who knows, right? I think there's a couple of things that will be interesting to see how it plays out. I think AI might come into play somewhere. I think eventually you'll be able to plug in, press a button, and you'll have a piece of software that will be able to create a piece of content that you won't be able to tell if it's written by software or if it's written by a real person. I'm not really looking forward to that. I think that'll be a sad day for the internet. I think that anytime we see that, when people, creative people, lose any sense of enthusiasm around their art because someone can just press a button and you get a 2,000-word article, I'm not in favor of that, but I think it's probably likely. The other thing that I think we might see more changes will be in technology, whether it's voice or the way in which we search. I don't know what's likely to happen there. But I think one trend that I'm definitely seeing here in Australia, and perhaps this is happening overseas, I'm seeing companies hire people to create content as a full-time role or position within the business. They're hiring people to create content because they understand that the way in which we do business on the internet is heavily, like a lot of that, selling, pre-selling and building trust and establishing your brand and raising awareness, and all of that is heavily dependent on content, right? And as you know, content's a big part of SEO. So I think you'll start seeing people being hired as content creators within companies. I think that will definitely happen. Now, one thing that you mentioned there that I want to touch on real quick: will websites go away? That's a very interesting question, and I often think about that because websites are very, very inefficient, right? If you think about what's involved, you've got to build the site, you've got to pay for hosting, you've got to spend an enormous amount of time, money, and effort trying to get traffic. I mean, it's a huge frustration for millions of people around the world. If something comes up like Amazon or eBay or even Facebook, where people no longer need a website and they can just click a button on a platform and everyone is already there, that could spell disaster. That'll mean a massive shift in the way in which people use the internet. I've always said that if Facebook figures out how to get that search working within Facebook, then they could really hurt Google, because, and I think a lot of this comes down to the fact that in Google, when you search, you just get this random list of websites and you have to try and make a decision. Oh, are these guys any good? Whereas on Facebook, when someone searches, they're not actually, well, I shouldn't say they're not searching, they're asking their friends and people that they know and trust. They're saying, hey, does anyone know a good restaurant at Ettalong Beach? And then you'll get a responses. And that holds much more weight than just getting a random set of results in search. So I've been saying this for years. I think if Facebook ever figured out how to make that search work inside Facebook, then that would spell disaster for Google. I mean, at the moment, trying to find things on Facebook is near impossible.
Okay. So we have very few minutes left, but let's try to cover as much question as possible. But please ask your questions. Even if we can't cover that on this live, we'll definitely come back to your questions, and then we'll record a video and then post.
Rambo, I just, sorry to interrupt. There's one question here that I can see on the screen that I want to answer.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not sure who's asking it. The question is, what's the best way to generate tons of content so that I don't have to worry later in any niche? As an agency owner, what is your content creation process? Do you have in-house writers or freelancers? How are you creating content? Okay, this is something that I talk a lot about in my training, and you would be already familiar with that. I host what I call Q&A sessions, right? So for example's sake, I mean, let's say that I'm working with a pest control company, and I understand why this person is asking the question, because creating content as part of SEO can be extremely tiresome. I mean, it's very time intensive, especially if you've got to research the space, you've got to reverse engineer, you've got to rewrite content, you've got to hire writers. I've seen a lot of people running around the internet saying, I need to find a writer that has knowledge about pest control or physiotherapy or family law. I don't do any of that. Okay, what I do, I use a strategy based around Q&As. Right now, a Q&A session is essentially where you get a list of questions or topics. Right, so you might get, I don't know, you can get say 20 or 30 questions together, send those over to the client, and have them pick out 4 or 5 of those questions that they want to cover. You take those questions, you get them on a call like this, you ask the question, and you let them speak, right? And you let them speak for, say, 10 minutes per question. And if you have to ask additional questions in there to get to that 10-minute point, then you can do that. So essentially what I do is if I'm working with a client, say in the pest control space, I'll send over, say, hey, you specialize in termites. Here's 50 questions about termites. Pick out 5 that you want to talk about. We'll organize the call. I have that client on the call. I'll have the questions in front of me. I ask the questions. I let the client speak. I record that conversation. And at the end of that conversation, I have, if I've covered 5 topics or 5 questions, I'll have 5 separate recordings for each topic or question. I then take those recordings and I upload them to a site called rev.com, rev.com, and I have those recordings transcribed, right? I then take those transcriptions and I pass those transcriptions over to my girls that handle all of my content, my writing, right? Because I've got 2 girls that work for me. They take those transcriptions and they just clean them up, and they what's the word I'm looking for? They convert those transcriptions into traditional blog posts, right? So it doesn't read like an interview, it reads like a traditional blog post. So if you were to read it, you wouldn't know. You'd think, okay, well, this is great. Now, there's a couple of advantages of doing Q&A sessions. One, it's really fast, right? You ask a question and a client talks for 10 minutes, that will get you about 1,000 words, right? So you're getting 1,000 words of content in, say, 10 minutes. I can have a whole month's worth of content done in about 45 minutes. So it's very fast. The next thing is it's easy. I mean, it's very easy. I don't have to hire someone that's an expert in any particular field. I just get the client on the call. This is what you need to remember as an SEO consultant. The most knowledgeable person in that business is the actual business owner, because they've been doing it for probably 10 or 20 years, right? So all you need to do is have a conversation and record it and ask them. And the next point is it's accurate, right? Accuracy matters a lot, especially when you get into sensitive industries like the financial space or legal or medical, where the accuracy of the content has to be bang on. So getting the information from the client and using that Q&A strategy works extremely well, and it's something that I've been doing for years, and it's something that I teach in the group. A lot of my students are using that same strategy as well. I use that for blog posts, sometimes use it for service pages and other things, but mainly for blog posts.
Okay, so John, how much time you have? Because we can.
Yeah, I'll give you another 15 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your time, John. Okay, so you are also seeing the questions like if you think, if you personally like to answer some questions, please pick it, and then we're definitely gonna have more questions, which I will create a list and then send it over to you, and then you can record a short video on that.
Okay, let me take this next question here again. I can't. I just see Facebook user. I don't see a name. Here's the questions. Have you ever dealt with a website that's so bad, whatever you do, it does not show any sign of improving in the search results? And if you happen to find any solutions to it, what do you do? Do you start a new website, shutting down the old one? This is a great question. As part of my process, and this is something that I'll be covering in detail within the group, and as part of the training, I have always in the past made it compulsory for new clients that work with me. They need to start with a new site build, right? That doesn't, I say compulsory, that doesn't always happen, but 9 times out of 10 it does happen, because you can't do SEO and get great results if you're working on a broken website. If the website is broken, the first thing you should do is work towards fixing it, right? You've got to fix the site. You've got to fix the site first. You can't just start trying to do on-page and blasting links and doing content on something that's never going to work. This is something that I've been doing for a long time. You know, I'll often say to clients, look, if you want to work with me, you're going to have to fix the website. What's wrong with it? Well, here, I'll give you a full list of everything that's broken. This is broken. This isn't going to work. You've got your site's being de-indexed. You've got toxic links. It's going to be far more cost effective. It's going to be a better use of your money and my time for us to just blow this thing away and start over. And that's typically what I do 90% of the time. Now, there's one thing that I will say here, and this is something that I'll be, again, covering in detail. When you niche down and specialize, right? I've been talking about this a bit lately, Rambo. You can build out ready-made templates, right? So you already have, if you're niching down and you're specializing in SEO for plumbers, you might have 5 or 6 templates for plumbers, right, in a demo or staging environment that are ready to go. So when the phone rings and you get a plumber and he says, I want help with SEO, you say, well, listen, you work with us. If you want to work with us, you need to pick one of our designs and we'll install it for you. Because you can waste an enormous amount of time fixing things on a broken website before you even start performing productive tasks that are going to start moving the needle. You can waste 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 months mucking around trying to, doing web design and not doing all of this other nonsense, as opposed to actually doing SEO and getting results for the client. So in answer to that question, I normally always blow the site away, but if you niche down and specialize, you can sell pre-made templates so that you actually say, hey, it's going to take 5 months for us to fix this thing, and it's going to cost you $10,000. Let's not do that. Pick one of these ready-made templates, SEO friendly. They're ready to go straight out of the box. All we do is we install, and you can have an installation done just like you would installing WordPress with a ready-made theme, and you can have that done in a matter of hours. That way you can start focusing on the tasks that really matter, like off-page and content, and getting the phone ringing for the client.
Okay. So there are a few questions now. Okay. There was one question I wanted to ask. Okay. What is your SEO optimization process? After reviewing the site, what are the key areas you look for, like content, links, technical, and something else?
Yeah, that's a big one, and probably not something that I can answer on this call. It's far too much to cover. There's a video, Rambo, on my YouTube channel where I explain my entire process, right? Okay. The video goes through about 50 minutes. So have a look for that. and share that in the follow-up comments after the call. It's too much to cover. It's too much to cover. But there is if you go to YouTube and just type in "bring the SEO," you'll see SEO campaign process. You'll see I explain my entire process there.
Okay, just a second. I'm doing that, sir. So SEO campaign process you have uploaded 5 months ago. So yeah, I will put that.
Ago. Yeah, if anyone's interested, they can watch that. It is a long video though. There is a question here that I can see. What steps include a successful SEO campaign? How to create a winning strategy. This is something that I want to touch on because it was in your questions and we haven't yet spoken about it. Focusing on revenue. Focusing on revenue. Okay, 99%, and I want everyone to pay particular attention to what I'm about to say here because this matters big time. And this is what will separate you from everyone else that's running around the internet selling SEO. Focusing on revenue instead of rankings. If you're focusing on revenue for your clients and ensuring that they're getting a positive return on investment, that will change everything. We've already spoken about how to improve our retention rates and get clients staying on board for 12 or 18 months. If your client's putting in $2,000 a month and they're making $80,000 or $100,000 a month out of that investment, then they're not going to go anywhere. Okay, so it's very, very important that you focus on revenue. I'm not sure if we probably don't have time for me to explain how that works, but if you're providing e-commerce, then of course you need to filter out. You need to present that within your reporting, filter that out through organic traffic, so you can see sales data. For lead gen, you track calls and also email inquiries that come through the website, tied in against using an agreed monetary value. So every inquiry that comes through is 25% of the lead value. So I mean, I don't want to confuse people here because it gets complicated. But if you focus your efforts on revenue and not rankings, it will change everything that you're currently doing. 99%, as I said, 99% of people that are providing SEO services are talking about rankings. I don't talk about rankings at all with my clients. We talk about revenue. I get on an end-of-month strategy call with a client and I say, Sean, what did you do this month? Oh, John, we had 35 inquiries and we sold 20 of these machines and we did $180,000. Brilliant. I'll see you next month. Right? You want to focus on revenue. It's all about ensuring that your client puts $1 in, pulls the lever, and they get $2, $3, $4, or $5 out. Now, when you focus on revenue and you can demonstrate a positive return on investment for your clients, they will not leave you. I've got clients that have been with me for almost 5 years, paying $2,500 a month. And the reason they don't want to go anywhere else is because they know they're getting a return on their investment.
Okay. There is 2 questions, John. If you scroll down in the comment section, you see there is one about AI and then another about sandbox. So which one you'd like to answer first?
Yeah, I think sandbox is a myth. I think people get caught up in a lot of nonsense around this whole sandbox theory. Any site that doesn't have link equity, it's just not going to perform. You register a new domain, you throw up a website. I mean, I see this conversation all the time. I've just launched a new site and it's not ranking. It's like a week old. What's wrong with you? You know what I mean? There's no such thing as sandbox. Google is not going to start throwing a site up the first page ahead of sites that are well established and have an enormous amount of established traffic and link equity. It just doesn't work that way. I mean, it's very much like, when you have kids, you don't have a 6-month-old toddler that's skating around the house on a pair of rollerblades. You've got to crawl first, then learn to walk, and then you can run. And you don't. It's this whole notion around. There are so many myths. There's so much nonsense in the SEO space that it just does my head in. You know, I could probably spend an hour just talking about that, but you know, for SEO is actually very, very easy. It's simple, but people take this thing that is actually very simple and they make it so complicated. I think the biggest problem, the biggest mistake I see most SEO consultants making is they get caught up in all of the technical nonsense, and there's just no need for it. I mean, you've done my training, Rambo. You would know that. I mean, I break things down, and it's pretty damn simple. You know, build a clean site with a sensible site structure, add quality content, build links from relevant sites. I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, create great content, provide value, give users web visitors a reason to want to visit the site or link to it or share it. I think people, I don't know, for whatever reason, I think people get lost in the technical stuff and they like to talk about crawl budgets and indexation ratios and keyword density. And I see that stuff and it puts me to sleep. It's, you know, you don't need to waste any time on that. Yeah.
Okay.
As to the other question here around AI, I think we've already kind of touched on that. Communicate. What's this? Scraping the requirements they post from. I'm not sure what this. Are you using any bots? No, I don't. Everything I do in my business, I do manually. I mean, I use software, of course. I use Ahrefs and SEMrush and SERPbook and Screaming Frog and Excel and Notepad. I'd be silly not to use those tools. But I don't use any software where it supports lazy SEO. I think anytime you start using a piece of software to make things easy or to cut corners, I think that's lazy SEO, and it's just never a good idea.
Okay, so we're almost at the end of the live. John, I want to ask, okay, you always say that, okay, mindset is very important. Okay, so could you tell a little bit about the mindset to be successful in SEO? What kind of mindset would need to have?
Wow, this is a really interesting question because it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with SEO. But I've seen a lot of people that have, you know, because I speak with a lot of SEO consultants. I've spoken with hundreds over the last 7 or 8 years or so, and I see a lot of them struggling, not because they don't have good technical knowledge or they can't do the work. In a lot of cases, their mindset is broken. They are driven by fear. Their heads full of false belief systems. They're lacking confidence. They're full of uncertainty and self-doubt. And I get it for people that are new to the industry. You'll have a lot of uncertainty, especially if you're trying to find your way. But a couple of things that really helped me, I remember, I mean, I've made so many mistakes. I sat in on meetings and said stupid things and had people swear at me and tell me to get lost and tell me no, or you're too expensive, and I've embarrassed myself. And I've made all of those mistakes. And for me, I got to the point where I just got sick and tired of failing. Right. So for me, I got to the point where I'm like, I'm sick and tired of failing. I'm sick and tired of the struggle. I don't care anymore. I'm just going to be brutally honest with people, speak my mind, tell them exactly what they need to do. And, you know, I'll take whatever comes of that. So I actually took my frustrations and I almost got angry in a sense. And because I really struggled with confidence. I wasn't a confident person, but I just got so sick and tired of struggling because I'd go to an internet marketing meetup or an SEO get together, and I'd be sitting with people that really didn't have much knowledge about SEO, and they were making $100,000 a month. And I was thinking, like, what am I doing wrong? And I got frustrated. So I took that frustration and I thought, no, I'm done with this. I'm going all in on this. I'm going to be relentless. So I went from not being confident to being frustrated to being angry, and then just going for it and thinking, right, if I upset someone because I'm being honest, then that's their problem. It's not my problem. I'm not saying by any means that I was rude, but I would much prefer to just be straightforward and honest with a client and say, listen, I can't help you unless we fix the site, or that's not how we operate, or you're asking me to do something we don't do, or SEO doesn't work that way. So I kind of started trending in that direction, and that's when everything changed for me. At the same time, I was working with a mentor as well who helped me build my confidence. But building confidence and changing my mindset made a massive, massive difference for me in my business. Because I've spoken with a lot of SEO consultants. I get them on calls and they're like, oh, I don't think I can charge that much, or no one wants to pay that much, or there's not enough work to go around, or I don't have the skills. If you're thinking that way, then you don't stand a chance. Because if you don't back yourself, then no one's going to, right? So you've got to, my mentor said to me years ago, he said, John, he said, you're a good guy. You got the knowledge, you lack the confidence. He said, every morning for the next few days, I want you to get up in the morning, look in the mirror and say, I'm a fucking superhero. I can do this. I'm going to do this. No one's going to stop me. Right. And I thought that was pretty silly, but it was actually, it's really true, because mindset, right? If your mindset's broken, none of this other stuff matters. Mindset is the most important thing out of everything that we've discussed on this call, because if you've got a broken mindset, you don't have confidence, you don't believe in yourself, you think there's not enough money to go around, or there's not enough work, or you don't have the skills. If your mindset is broken, then you do not stand a chance. Right? Now, how do you go about changing your mindset? You've got to spend time. You've got to surround yourself with winners, right? This is another thing that helps me. Like, you sit beside someone that's making $10 million a year, that changes your mindset pretty fast, right? So my advice for anyone on the call that is interested, get yourself a mentor. Take a look at the people you spend time with, right? Are the people that you spend time with sitting around going, oh, it's all hard and no one wants to pay and I've got no money? And you can't spend time with people like that. You've got to spend time with winners. The other thing that I probably recommend is take a look at reading a few books. Plenty of books on Amazon about, building your self-esteem and, having a winning mindset. I read hundreds and hundreds of books. I had huge tubs, about 5 of them, of personal development, business, wealth creation. I read anything and everything because I was just hungry to learn and I wanted to do better. But mindset is everything.
Okay. Thank you, John. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Because I know it's very late for you, but you made a time for us. And then, it was a very valuable session. And then to the audience, our live is gonna stop now. But if you have any questions for John, please put that in a comment. If you are watching it, the recorded version, please put your comments, and then we'll definitely answer your question in few days. So. That's all for today's live. Thank you everyone for participation. And thank you, John, for making time to this. And then, it was really valuable. Even I noted a few things.
No problems, dude. That's fine.
Okay, so that's all
Thank.
for tonight's live, and then we'll see you soon with our other live. Thank you.
All right.